This past year, PlayStation has had a very heavy push on the hardware and accessory side of things, and their most recent, and for now at least, last releases for this is this new PlayStation Pulse Elite headset, a priced up, more expensive, and fancier version of their previously released Pulse 3D with a number of different upgrades at a slightly increased price point, with the original one running for $99. Usually you can find it a little lower though if you can find it on sales, with the MSRP on the Elite being $149. Real quick, one important disclosure: while this is not a sponsored video, the Pulse Elite that I'm covering is one that was sent to me by PlayStation for free for review purposes, so thank you very much to them for that. Now, obviously, as part of this review, I want to focus on the differences between these two headsets, and, if you're looking at, say, getting an official first-party PlayStation headset, whether or not it's worth spending that extra $50 to get the Elite version. But I think another very important question here is the fact that, the Pulse 3D has been available basically since the launch of the PlayStation 5, whereas the Pulse Elite has now only just released about 3 years later, so there's a pretty good chance that you might already own a Pulse 3D headset, and if that's the case, is it worth spending $150 to get the same thing, but improved? First thing I really want to touch on is the physical design of these headsets, because there's actually a lot of things different about the Pulse Elite compared to the original. The original Pulse headset, if you've had your hands on one before, the majority of the controls are all located on the left ear cup, and it's just a variety of buttons and things you can press on the body itself, which, look, when you've used one for a while and you're used to it, you're able to remember the layout and what's what, but the first time you're using it, it is a lot of things all located on a single ear cup, right? You have the power switch, a monitoring switch, 2 different volume control tabs, one of which is meant for volume, the other one is game and chat balance. You've got a mic mute button, whereas on the Elite, they've really condensed down a lot of this, either simplifying some of these buttons, changing their location to places that make them a bit more memorable, or just outright removing them. In fact, there's actually only 3 main buttons you need to be concerned with on the Elite. You have a pair of volume buttons near the back of the right ear cup. On the front of that is the power button, which also doubles as a short key for jumping right into volume controls in the PS5's UI. You just triple tap it real quick, and that's going to bring up a quick menu of all the additional options. And then a mic mute button that is basically located directly on the microphone. That's actually another thing worth noting that's a major difference, is that on the original Pulse 3D headset, there is no protruding microphone. It's just built into the ear cup, and that's going to pick up your voice. Whereas on the Pulse Elite, it is now a more traditional protruding mic that is also retractable, so it just comes out right here. So when you want to mute it, you just press a button that's directly on the mic itself, making it pretty easy to remember where that specific input is. Now you'll notice that's definitely a lot less physical controls than are what on the Pulse 3D, and a large part of that is because the emphasis is now that you should be using most of these controls directly through the PS5 UI. Game chat balance, for example, you're not actually able to control that inside the PS5's UI. You have to use the buttons on the headset, whereas with the Elite, you don't have any buttons on the headset. Instead, you just rely on those hotkeys in the system. That's something you're able to access either using your DualSense, or again, you can triple tap the power button on the Elite, giving you a nice little shortcut for those directly relevant audio controls. Now, aside from onboard controls, another important thing to look at between these two headsets is just the general comfort of them. And I will say that, at least for me and my own experience with them, the Elite has been a lot more comfortable. It really comes down to 2 main things. The headbands feel pretty much the same. The actual overarching, just how it rests on your head, basically identical. The ear cups, however, on the Elite feel a lot different in 2 main ways. One, they're a little larger. I've noticed that with the original Pulse 3D, my ears just feel a little more crowded in by the ear cup, and they're not necessarily being squished by them, but they are crowded in a little bit, whereas there was a little bit more breathing room on the interior ear cups for the Elite. And on top of that, the texture and feeling of the material for the ear cups is different. It's a little softer, both in the sense of the cushioning inside of it and how that presses and depresses down, but also just the texture of the material itself against your ear just feels a little more plush and comfy by comparison. When you're talking about price point and things on headsets, I think it's somewhat of a given or assumption that a lot of that is going to be more focused on the audio quality side of things, but it is very nice, and I think important to note that I think comfort-wise, the Elite is definitely a step up. Now, speaking of audio quality, obviously the 2 big things here worth talking about are the mic quality and how other people hear you, and of course just how the headsets themselves sound. In the case of headset audio quality and just what you were hearing from games themselves, the Elite is again a major step up, which shouldn't be a surprise. It's the more expensive headset, but I do think it's worth emphasizing that, at least in my experience, it feels like a pretty noticeable difference. The largest thing I was really noticing is that the peak volume, the sense of separation of sounds, and really the bass. The bass comes through on the Elite a lot more than the original Pulse 3D headset. The Pulse 3D headset still sounds good, but just going back and forth between them, especially when it comes to things like sound effects and environmental tone and just the sense of positioning with everything, it just sounds a lot cleaner and more pronounced on the Pulse Elite. As for microphone quality, honestly, while there is a difference here, it's not as much as I expected it to be. You know, I really thought that changing to a more traditional retractable mic would lead to something that was, you know, noticeably leaps and bounds better. And it is better, but not by a massive amount. In fact, I actually recorded audio from both of them back to back to compare. So for reference, this is what my voice sounds like speaking into the Pulse Elite. Specifically, I have the mic actually out and in front of my mouth as opposed to having it fully retracted where it's off to the side. And this is me speaking into the Pulse 3D. And the really big difference here is that because the microphone is just located on the ear cup instead of being in front of your mouth, you're going to end up getting a lot more room tone and sounding more distant by comparison. Now that's the primary way these two headsets compare in terms of things they both do. It is worth noting the Pulse Elite actually does come with a couple other features and updates and changes compared to the original Pulse 3D. First off, this is using PlayStation's new PlayStation Link technology, as opposed to using a 2.4 gigahertz connection like the original one did. And the main important difference there is that the proprietary PlayStation Link design is just a higher quality signal. Most importantly, it's offering something that is not only low latency, but also lossless. Because it is using PlayStation Link, that also means that it is capable of directly connecting to the PlayStation Portal without any kind of additional dongles. I will say this isn't really a mark against the Elite, but still just a hanging frustration I have with the new PS5 Slims. I'm still not sure why those didn't come with PlayStation Link built in right away, because while sure, I can just use the included USB dongle to plug into the system and add that functionality, I just find it so odd this is a new feature and technology that was announced at basically the same time as the PlayStation 5 revision, and it wasn't something built into it. You have to rely on the dongle for connecting. Not the end of the world, just still something that makes me scratch my head a little bit. The Elite also comes with the functionality of supporting a Bluetooth connection simultaneously with its PlayStation Link connection. The main benefit here being that you can do things like connect your phone to the Bluetooth while having the PlayStation Link connection to your PS5. So if you want to take a phone call but not interrupt your actual gameplay and still have audio coming from the game but also receive that phone call audio, those are things that you can do with this headset with that simultaneous connection. One other important thing to touch on is battery and just charging these headsets. This is one of the biggest differences between them that I didn't really expect. The battery life on the Pulse Elite is a lot higher. The Pulse 3D is rated at around 12 hours, whereas the Pulse Elite is hitting up to 30. Now, if you're on top of charging your headset in between gameplay sessions, 12 hours, more than likely enough for most people. But if you have a bad habit of forgetting to charge, or maybe you really just have that one very long extended play session you want to settle in for, the Elite's battery life is an advantage. One other interesting little bonus with the Elite is that along with being able to charge it via just using a USB-C cable, is it actually comes with a rechargeable hook setup as well. That I wish I liked more, to be honest. It's neat that it comes with it. It's like a nice little bonus feature. I just wish that if it was going to come with a charging stand option, it was something that was maybe a little more self-sufficient. What it comes with is a charging hook that you have to install on a wall yourself and then run a cable to as well, which I don't love the look of quite as much. I think that's a fine option to offer people, but I would prefer something that was maybe a more self-contained hook stand, for instance, that didn't need to be bolted onto a wall and then had the power cable coming out of the base of it, which is a little easier to hide. Which, with that said, considering all the upgrades this headset has at the price difference it is versus the Pulse 3D, the charging hook is basically a bonus. So, Pulse Elite versus Pulse 3D. If it isn't obvious already, at least as far as just these two headsets head-to-head, price points compared, I feel like the Elite is just the obvious choice here. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't want to spend the extra money, you just want a headset that works, the Pulse 3D is fine. But if you're able to afford that price difference and just push a little higher to go for the Elite, it is just flat out the better headset option for a variety of different reasons. The other important question though is, if you already have a Pulse 3D, is it worth spending $150 all over again to get the upgrades the Elite has to offer? And that I'm a little more on the fence about. The Elite absolutely is the better headset of the two, but if you already have a functioning and solid Pulse 3D, I don't think you necessarily need to rush out and buy the Elite because it's that much better of an experience. That said, if you like using first-party hardware and you want the best versions of it no matter what, even if you've already invested in a previous form of it, the Elite is absolutely worth grabbing. So those are my thoughts on the PlayStation Elite headset. If you're interested in grabbing that one or any other things I talked about in today's video, I've got those links down below in the description. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, hit the bell icon so you actually make sure you get notified on those videos, and I will see you guys later.